on the West Wing.
OK, Gary O'Donoghue at the White House. Thank you for that. We're joined now by Laura Blumenfeld, a Middle East analyst at Johns Hopkins University and former senior policy advisor at the State Department's Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team. Laura, thanks indeed for joining us. What's your interpretation of what Joe Biden means, what his administration means when they say, if they don't make changes to their policies, we'll make changes to ours?
Well, I think this phone call was really the come to Jesus conversation that President Biden hinted to several weeks ago. I think what he's saying is the era of unconditional love and guns is over, and that U.S. support for Israel is really going to hinge on its ability to protect Palestinian civilians as they prosecute this war.
How serious a shift in the relationship is that when we think back to just a couple of days after October 7th, Joe Biden flying to Israel, embracing Benjamin Netanyahu, and then this conversation?
Absolutely. Look, it's been changing. We went from a hug to a business-like handshake, and today we've got a slap on the wrist. Indeed. It's complicated, though, by Israel's relationship overall in the Middle East. On the same day that Israel mistakenly killed 7 aid workers from the West, they deliberately killed Iranian generals up in Damascus. So Israel is now under threat. They managed to tick off both the Americans and the Iranians in the same day. And I don't think America is going to leave Israel exposed to the Iranians, to an ally, the Israelis as an ally.
But when they're talking about the US policies potentially changing, what options are open to the Biden administration on that front?
Well, I do think that they could slow roll weapons delivery. I don't think they'll cut them off altogether. It not only exposes, Israel to Iran at a sort of critical point in the war, but it also exposes President Biden to criticism, both from congressional Republicans and, of course, his opponent in this race, Donald Trump, who, when you ask what is his favorite biblical quote, he will tell you, an eye for an eye.
There have been calls, though, to suspend arms outright to Israel in relation to what's gone on over the last 6 months and what happened on Monday with the aid workers. Is that a realistic prospect?
I think it's absolutely realistic prospect. I don't think we're there yet. The United States has been very clear, even in the fog of war, of laying out red lines. Do not cross these lines, Israel. And they haven't done that yet. That's what they're looking for now. They're saying we want to see a response from Israel in the next hours, if not days. And then, yes, as Secretary Blinken says, superpowers don't bluff. There will be consequences.
From what you know of how these things work, though, how quick or how easy is it to cut off arms supplies like that? I mean, these deals are done some time in advance, aren't they?
Right. I mean, there's a long, many years pipeline. So it's not like there'll be an immediate turning off of the spigot. But for offensive weapons, they certainly could slow roll, resupply. And Israel is heavily reliant on the United States at this point, especially because they're facing a multi-war conflict, a multi-front conflict. While we're talking about Israel and Gaza, if you look at the Israeli press and talk to Israeli generals, their eyes are all on the north. They really are expecting a showdown with Hezbollah, and Israel is heavily reliant on weapons from the United States to prosecute that war. For some Israelis, they feel like the true war hasn't even begun.
We've heard from the US since the beginning of this phase of the conflict about efforts to stop regional spread and escalation. If they were to cut off arms, from what you're describing there, that would leave Israel at least exposed to that level of escalation.
Well, so America's been very careful, speak softly and carry a big aircraft carrier. On the one hand, they are giving Israel a slap on the wrist. With the other hand, though, they've got a defensive arm up, and Israel is actually relying on the United States to intercept potential missiles from Iran or other kind of strikes. Israel is bracing, especially perhaps tomorrow, which is a holy day, for a potential strike on its own home territory. And they have put out messages to the United States. They expect it to intervene, or they hope it will.
When it's an election year in the US, often these decisions are viewed through that prism. How much do you think that sort of domestic political pressure will be colouring what the Biden administration is deciding?
It's increasing day by day. This war in Gaza has become more and more of a problem for Biden on the trail with voters, with hecklers. In life-saving, there's a concept of double drowning. When a lifeguard tries to rescue somebody, if the swimmer is thrashing around so much, he'll take the lifeguard down with him. Biden wants to avoid a double drowning. Netanyahu is clearly washed up. He's done. And I think one thing that Biden is trying to do is separate Netanyahu and his toxic war policies, what he considers toxic war policies, from the body politic of Israel. He's working with, Israel's opposition member and trying to see beyond Netanyahu, even appealing to the Israeli public over the head of their failed leader.
OK, we'll leave it there for today. Laura Blumenfeld, Middle East Analyst at Johns Hopkins University and former Senior Policy Advisor on the State Department's Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team. Thanks for joining us on BBC News.
Thank you.